It was a chilly morning when the nurse woke up, her small apartment feeling colder than usual. The heater had broken last week, and she had not been able to fix it yet. She rubbed her eyes and sat up, thinking about the stack of bills waiting for her on the kitchen counter. Every month it felt like she was climbing a hill she could never reach the top of. Losing her job at the hospital had been a shock. She had dedicated years of her life to taking care of patients, working long hours and giving everything she could. And now in just a single week it all seemed to vanish. She took a deep breath and tried to shake off the feeling of despair. Life had a way of testing people, and she told herself she could face it. She made herself a cup of tea, hoping the warmth would help her feel stronger. As she sipped, she thought about the people she had helped at the hospital, the patients who smiled at her, the families she comforted, and even the moments when she stayed late just to make sure someone had everything they needed. That had been her purpose. But now, with no job and no income, she felt that purpose was slipping away. After finishing her tea, she decided to take a walk to clear her mind. The streets were quiet, the early morning sun casting a soft glow on the buildings. Even in this small, ordinary town, she loved how people moved about their day, busy with their own lives. As she walked, she tried not to think about her own problems. She looked around, noticing the small things, the way a stray cat had curled up on a doorstep, the smell of freshly baked bread from the bakery on the corner, the laughter of children waiting for the school bus. It was then that she noticed a man standing near the side of the road. He looked anxious and frustrated. His car had broken down, and he was pacing back and forth, glancing at his phone and then at the engine. He seemed completely lost, unsure of what to do next. Most people might have walked past him thinking it was not their problem, but she couldn't. Something inside her pushed her to act. She approached him gently. "Hi, do you need some help?" she asked. The man looked at her, surprised. He had clearly been struggling for a while, and now someone had appeared out of nowhere, offering kindness without any expectation. "Yeah, my car just stopped working and I don't know what to do," he said, a little embarrassed. She smiled warmly. "Don't worry, we can figure something out. Let's see what's going on." Without hesitation, she bent down and examined the car, even though she was not a mechanic. Her instincts kicked in. She knew that even if she couldn't fix it completely, she could at least help him find a solution. She asked him questions about what had happened, and they talked as she checked the engine. While she worked, she could see how tense he was. He was clearly overwhelmed. It was not just about the car. He seemed weighed down by life itself. She offered him a cup of tea she had in her bag, and they sat on the curb for a moment. They talked about everyday things, about the weather, about work, about life in the city and the small town. She listened carefully, genuinely interested, and he began to open up. He spoke about the pressure he had been under, the problems piling up, and the sense of hopelessness that had been following him for days. She didn't judge him or try to solve everything at once. She just listened, offering words of encouragement when he needed them. "You've already done a lot by reaching out for help," she told him. "It's okay to take a step back and breathe. Things can get better." After a while, they decided that the car could not be fixed on the spot and it needed a tow. She helped him call a nearby mechanic and even offered to wait with him until help arrived. He seemed grateful, though he kept insisting he didn't want to trouble her. She brushed it off. "You're not troubling me. Helping people is what I do," she said with a smile. While they waited, she shared a little about herself. She told him that she had recently lost her job and that things were hard for her too. She didn't want pity. She simply wanted him to feel that he was not alone in struggling. He listened carefully and seemed to appreciate her honesty. In that moment, the barriers between two strangers began to dissolve. It wasn't about the car or the problem at hand. It was about human connection, about someone showing care when it was needed most. By the time the tow truck arrived, the tension had lifted a little. The man thanked her repeatedly, clearly moved by her kindness. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You didn't have to do all this for me." She smiled and waved it off. "Just take care of yourself. That's enough thanks for me." After seeing him safely into the tow truck, she finally continued her walk home. The sun had risen higher, casting a golden glow over the streets. She felt a small spark of warmth in her heart. Even though her own life was filled with uncertainty, she realized that helping someone else had given her a sense of purpose, even if just for a few hours. As she walked, She reflected on the day's events. Life could be harsh and unfair, but it could also be full of small moments of beauty and kindness. She remembered all the patients she had cared for over the years, the families she had comforted, and now this man whose day had been changed by her actions. For a brief moment, it reminded her why she had chosen this path, why she had devoted herself to helping others even when it was difficult. When she finally reached her apartment, she felt a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. She knew that the coming days would still be challenging. Bills needed to be paid, rent was due, and her future was uncertain. But she also knew something else. Kindness mattered. Small acts could create ripples that were bigger than anyone could imagine. That night she lay in bed thinking about the man she had helped. She didn't expect anything in return, and yet a part of her wondered if the universe might somehow repay her, even in ways she could not foresee. For now she let herself sleep, comforted by the knowledge that she had done the right thing, that she had chosen compassion over indifference. Even in the midst of her own struggle, she had made a difference in someone else's life. And for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. Hope that things could change. Hope that life might have a way of rewarding those who give without expecting anything back. And hope that perhaps tomorrow could be a little brighter. The night was quiet, and the world seemed calm, but deep inside, she felt that life was about to surprise her in ways she had never imagined. She didn't know it yet, but the act of helping a stranger would set in motion a series of events that would change her life forever. For now, though, she closed her eyes, letting herself drift into sleep, carrying with her the warmth of knowing she had done something truly good. The next morning, the nurse woke up with the same weight on her shoulders. The bills were still there, the rent was still due, and the worry hadn't left her mind. Yet something had changed inside her. The memory of helping the man yesterday lingered in her thoughts like a small light in a dark room. Even though she had given her time and energy to a stranger while her own life was uncertain, she didn't regret it. That act of kindness had reminded her of who she truly was, a person who cared, who gave, and who could make a difference even in small ways. She spent the morning running errands, buying groceries and trying to stretch what little money she had. Every time she glanced at her reflection in a shop window, she noticed the lines of worry on her face. But there was also something else, a quiet strength she hadn't realized she carried. She was surviving, even when life felt like it was pushing her down. Meanwhile, the man she had helped was not able to stop thinking about her. At first, he tried to focus on his own problems, work, finances, responsibilities, but her kindness had left a mark. It was unusual, he realized, for someone to care so deeply without expecting anything in return. In a world where people often helped only when there was gain, her generosity felt rare and genuine. He remembered her words, her smile, the way she had listened without judgment. It was as if for a few hours she had shown him what humanity really meant. He couldn't shake the thought that he wanted to repay her somehow. Not just with money or gifts, but in a way that truly honored her heart. But he also knew that life had to be approached carefully. He had resources, but he didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel uncomfortable. He thought about ways he could help her without it seeming like charity. He wanted it to be meaningful, a reflection of the respect he felt for her selflessness. Back at her apartment, the nurse tried to focus on practical matters. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, all checking in on her, offering words of comfort. She appreciated it, but she also knew that support could only go so far if her own circumstances didn't change. She was strong, but she wasn't invincible. She spent the afternoon looking for new job opportunities, filling out applications and sending emails. Each rejection she had received over the past week had been hard, but she refused to give up. She reminded herself that life was unpredictable, and sometimes the most challenging moments led to the most extraordinary outcomes. Later in the day, she received a message from the man she had helped. At first, she was surprised. She didn't even know his name really or anything about his life beyond the brief encounter on the roadside. Yet there it was, a simple text thanking her again and letting her know that he was okay. It was unexpected and it brought a smile to her face. She replied, wishing him well, and that was the end of it. Or so she thought. As the evening approached, she prepared a simple dinner and sat by her window watching the sun set over the town. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and for a moment, the troubles of her life felt a little lighter. She reflected on the day and realized something important. Helping someone else had made her feel more alive, more connected to the world around her. It reminded her that even when her own life felt uncertain, she had the power to touch someone else's. The man, on the other hand, couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about her, about the way she had acted without hesitation, without thinking of what she might gain. In his mind, he saw the contrast between her struggle and her generosity, and it struck him deeply. He realized that true kindness often comes at a cost, and in her case, the cost was her own energy, time, and emotional investment at a moment when she was vulnerable. That thought stayed with him, making him more determined than ever to ensure her life improved in some way. The following day, she decided to volunteer at a small local clinic. Even though she didn't have a paid job, she wanted to keep helping people. The clinic was understaffed, and her skills as a nurse were valuable. As she assisted patients, she noticed the gratitude in their eyes. Each person she helped, each smile she received in return gave her strength. She realized that the act of giving was not just for the recipient. It also gave her a sense of purpose, a reminder that she was still capable of making a difference despite her personal challenges. Meanwhile, the man began quietly gathering information about her life. He didn't want to intrude, but he wanted to know enough to understand how he could help in a way that felt natural and meaningful. He discovered small details: the modest apartment she lived in, the bills she had to manage, the fact that she had been laid off despite years of dedicated service. He was careful not to reveal himself just yet, observing from a distance, letting his admiration for her grow. Days passed, and the nurse continued her routine, balancing her search for work with helping others. Each day brought its own challenges. Sometimes she felt tired, frustrated, or hopeless, but she refused to give in to despair. She kept reminding herself that life was unpredictable, and that even small moments of kindness could set off a chain reaction of positive events. One afternoon, while helping a patient at the clinic, she heard a voice in her head reminding her of the man she had helped. She thought about the brief interaction they had shared, the way he had seemed relieved, the way she had felt a sense of fulfillment from simply offering her assistance. It was remarkable to her how a short encounter could have such a lasting effect. She realized that life was full of these small, interconnected moments, where one action could ripple outward in ways she couldn't predict. The man, in the meantime, had made a decision. He wanted to ensure that her kindness did not go unnoticed or unrewarded. He wasn't looking to buy her happiness, but he wanted to give her a sense of security, a chance to live without constant fear of financial strain. He reflected on the values she had shown: selflessness, courage, compassion, and he wanted his response to reflect respect for those qualities. Late one evening, he reached out to someone he trusted, asking for advice on how to approach her life-changing situation carefully. He wanted to act thoughtfully, ensuring that any assistance would be received gracefully and with dignity. He didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel uncomfortable. Every decision he made was guided by the memory of her smile, her courage, and the way she had chosen to help someone else despite her own struggles. Back in her apartment, the nurse continued her quiet life, unaware of the plans unfolding on her behalf. She kept helping people at the clinic, kept applying for jobs, and kept reminding herself to stay positive. She knew that change could happen at any moment, but she also knew that she couldn't wait passively for it. She had to keep moving forward, keep giving, and keep believing in the power of kindness. One evening, as she sat down with a cup of tea, she reflected on the past week. It had been a roller coaster of emotions: fear, worry, hope, and fulfillment. She realized that even in the darkest moments there could be light. Helping someone else had given her a sense of strength she hadn't felt in days. It had reminded her that her life mattered, that her actions had meaning, and that even small gestures could create profound impact. Little did she know, the man she had helped was preparing to return her kindness in a way she could never have imagined. The foundation for a life-changing surprise had been laid, and the ripple of her generosity was already moving forward. That night, she fell asleep with a sense of calm, unaware of the life-altering events about to unfold. She dreamed of simple things: a quiet walk in the park, a patient smiling after treatment, the warmth of a stranger's gratitude. Her heart was full, her spirit resilient, and her belief in human goodness unwavering. She didn't know it yet, but the universe had noticed her selflessness. And so the stage was set. The actions of a single day, a single choice to help someone without expecting anything in return, were about to change her life forever. She had no idea that the next 24 hours would bring a surprise beyond her wildest dreams, a moment that would validate all the kindness, effort, and love she had poured into the world despite her own struggles. The following day began like any other, but for the nurse, life felt a little heavier. Even though she had found comfort in helping others, her own challenges were still pressing. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, each envelope a reminder of the reality she faced. Rent was due in just a few days and her savings were shrinking fast. The worry was constant, creeping into every thought. Still, she forced herself to carry on, believing that life could shift at any moment. She reminded herself of the small victories, helping patients at the clinic, offering a smile or a comforting word to someone in need, even managing to stretch her resources to feed herself adequately. These little wins gave her hope, but she knew the bigger challenge of survival remained. As she walked through the streets on her way to the clinic, she noticed things she had overlooked before. The town was waking up, people bustling to work, children laughing as they ran toward the school bus, and shopkeepers arranging their displays with care. In the middle of her own worry, she found herself smiling quietly. There was life happening around her, full of small joys and quiet beauty. And for a brief moment she felt connected to it, reminded that even in hardship, life offered glimpses of happiness if one was willing to notice them. Meanwhile, the man she had helped was unable to focus on his own routine. He went through his day mechanically, but his thoughts constantly returned to her. He recalled the way she had bent down beside his broken car, examining it with care despite not being a mechanic. He remembered her warm smile, her calm words, and the sense of reassurance she had offered in a moment of panic. In a world where most people only acted in their own self-interest, her generosity had stood out like a beacon. He realized that such people were rare, and when he saw her struggle, he felt compelled to do something to change her life for the better. But he was cautious. He didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel like she owed him anything. He wanted his actions to reflect genuine gratitude, to honor the selflessness she had shown him. He quietly observed her life from a distance, learning more about her struggles without intruding. He saw the modest apartment she lived in, the long hours she spent volunteering at the clinic, and the ways she tried to stretch her resources to cover necessities. Each detail deepened his admiration for her character, and it strengthened his determination to help her in a meaningful way. Back in her apartment, the nurse was feeling the weight of exhaustion more than ever. Her job search had yielded little so far, and the constant worry about money made it hard to focus. Yet she refused to give up. She opened her laptop and continued sending out applications, each click of the mouse a small act of hope. She reminded herself that the world was unpredictable and that opportunities could appear when least expected. But at the same time, she could not ignore the reality around her. Life was hard, and survival required more than hope. It required action. In the middle of the afternoon, she received a phone call from one of her friends at the clinic. They needed extra help with a difficult patient, and she agreed to come. Despite her fatigue, she put on her uniform and headed out. The patient was an elderly man with complex health needs, and caring for him required patience and skill. As she worked, she found herself absorbed in the task. Helping someone in need had always given her purpose, and even when she was exhausted, the act of providing comfort reminded her why she had chosen this path in life. Meanwhile, the man was planning his next move carefully. He knew that he wanted to do something extraordinary for her, but it had to be perfect. He thought about all the ways he could make a meaningful difference without humiliating her or making her feel dependent. He considered her needs, her personality, and the dignity she carried even in hardship. He understood that true help did not come with conditions. It came from respect, understanding, and a desire to improve someone's life without taking away their agency. That evening, the nurse returned home feeling drained but quietly proud. She had spent the day giving everything she had, and yet there was a sense of fulfillment in her heart. Even in her personal struggle, she could see the impact of her work on others. Patients smiled, families expressed gratitude, and small victories reminded her that her life still held meaning. She prepared a simple dinner and sat by the window, watching the sky darken. The lights of the town flickered on, and she thought about how people lived their lives, each carrying unseen struggles and quiet victories. The man she had helped was awake that night thinking about her again. He replayed every moment of their encounter, realizing more and more that her kindness had left an impression that could not be measured in words. He remembered how she had listened without judgment, how she had offered help without expecting reward, and how she had smiled even while facing her own difficulties. The memory of her courage and selflessness stirred something deep inside him, a desire to act, to honor her with a gift worthy of the light she had shown him in a moment of darkness. He began making plans quietly, contacting people he trusted, researching ways to ensure that the help he provided would be meaningful and respectful. He didn't want to rush things. He wanted it to be thoughtful and considerate. Every detail mattered, because he knew that this was about more than just money or material things. It was about validating her generosity, her humanity, and her courage in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, the nurse tried to prepare herself for another day of uncertainty. She sat on her bed, flipping through her notes about job applications, bills, and volunteer schedules. She reflected on her life and realized that while she faced challenges, she also had a resilience that kept her moving forward. Every act of kindness she offered, every patient she comforted, and every person she helped reminded her that she had purpose beyond her personal struggle. She carried that knowledge quietly, letting it strengthen her resolve. As the night deepened, she drifted into sleep with a quiet hope in her heart. She dreamed of small joys, a child smiling after a medical checkup, a patient expressing gratitude, a stranger finding comfort in her words. These moments, though brief, reminded her that her life mattered and that she could make a difference despite her own hardships. Little did she know, her selflessness had already begun to set in motion events that would change her life forever. The man she had helped was carefully planning a surprise, one that would not only honor her courage and kindness, but also ensure that her struggles would be eased in ways she could never have imagined. The days that followed were filled with a quiet tension. She continued her routine, caring for patients, helping friends and neighbors, and searching for work. She never expected recognition, never imagined reward, but she believed in the value of her actions. Meanwhile, the man prepared in secret, arranging everything with precision and care. Every decision he made was influenced by the thought of her heart, her generosity, and the dignity with which she carried herself even in difficult circumstances. In the midst of her ordinary life, the extraordinary was quietly approaching. She was unaware that her simple act of helping a stranger on the roadside had already created ripples that would soon reach her in unimaginable ways. The universe, it seemed, had noticed her kindness, and it was preparing a response that would change the course of her life forever. The nurse went to bed that night, unaware of the incredible surprise waiting just around the corner. She closed her eyes, feeling tired yet determined, holding on to the belief that life could improve, that acts of goodness mattered, and that sometimes miracles came to those who gave without expecting anything in return. As she drifted off to sleep, the man she had helped stood at the edge of his own thoughts, planning, waiting, and imagining the moment when he could finally show her the depth of his gratitude. He knew that the next day would be extraordinary, not because of luck or coincidence, but because her kindness had earned it. He understood that true generosity could never go unnoticed, and he was ready to prove that sometimes the world repays goodness in ways we could never predict. The morning began like any other, with sunlight streaming gently through the small windows of the nurse's apartment. She woke up slowly, stretching and taking a deep breath. Life was still uncertain, bills still stacked on her counter, and the search for a job still pressing heavily on her mind. Yet she carried a quiet determination that had been growing stronger each day. She made herself a cup of tea and looked outside, watching the town slowly wake up. There was comfort in the ordinary, the bakery smell drifting through the street, children laughing as they ran to school, neighbors greeting one another. Even in the middle of her struggles, life had small moments of beauty. After finishing her tea, she decided to take a short walk, hoping it would lift her spirits. The streets were calm, with only a few people moving quickly to start their day. As she walked, she thought about the man she had helped a few days ago. She didn't know much about him, just that he had been stressed and frustrated with his broken car. She had helped him because it felt like the right thing to do, not because she expected anything in return. Yet in the quiet moments of her morning walk, she wondered if he was doing okay. Perhaps he had managed to fix his car. Perhaps his worries had eased. She smiled faintly at the thought, feeling a little warmth inside. Meanwhile, the man was already preparing for the moment he had planned for days. He had arranged for a way to surprise her, to show gratitude that matched the depth of her kindness. He knew she had been struggling, and he wanted to do something that would change her life in a meaningful and respectful way. It wasn't about wealth or luxury alone. It was about easing her worries, showing that her generosity had not gone unnoticed, and honoring the courage and selflessness she had displayed. Back at her apartment, the nurse heard a faint noise outside, unusual for this early hour. She peeked through the curtain but saw nothing at first. Shrugging, she returned to her morning routine, not thinking much of it. Then the sound grew louder, engines low and powerful coming closer. She frowned and went to the window again. Her eyes widened in disbelief. In front of her small apartment, 4 luxury cars had stopped. They gleamed in the sunlight, their polished surfaces reflecting the early morning sky. She blinked, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks on her. Before she could even process the sight, the man she had helped stepped out from one of the cars. His smile was warm, confident, and full of gratitude. She didn't recognize him at first. He looked different somehow, standing tall in his tailored suit, a briefcase in hand, and an air of purpose around him. Her heart started racing. Why was he here? What was happening? He approached her slowly, carefully, ensuring she had time to process the situation. "Good morning," he said softly. "I hope I'm not startling you. I just wanted to see you." The nurse's mind was spinning. She had never expected to see him again, let alone under these circumstances. I don't understand," she stammered. Why are you here?" He smiled gently. "I wanted to thank you properly. You helped me when I needed it most, and you didn't ask for anything in return. That kind of kindness deserves recognition." Her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to keep her composure. I just did what anyone would do. I didn't expect. I never thought." She trailed off, overwhelmed by the situation. He nodded, understanding her feelings. "I know. And that's what makes your actions extraordinary. You helped without expectation, and now I want to give back in a way that truly honors your heart." Slowly, he gestured toward the cars. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. All of this for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. The 4 cars stood there, gleaming and imposing, yet somehow symbolic of something much more than material wealth. They represented gratitude, acknowledgement, and the ripple effect of her kindness. He shook his head gently. "Not just for the cars. They're a symbol. What I truly want is to make sure your life is easier, that you don't have to worry as much about daily struggles. I want to give you an opportunity to live without constant fear, to continue being the amazing person you are without the weight of financial strain holding you back." She was speechless. Her mind couldn't process it all. Tears streamed down her face as emotions flooded her. Shock, disbelief, gratitude, and a deep sense of relief. She wanted to speak, but words failed her. All she could do was stand there, feeling the warmth of human kindness reflected back at her in a way she never imagined possible. The man continued, softly explaining everything. "I've arranged for more than just these cars. There are resources, opportunities, and support to help you and your family live comfortably and pursue your dreams. You have worked hard, cared for others, and never asked for anything in return. It's time the world returned some of that goodness to you." She finally found her voice, her words catching in her throat. I don't know what to say. I've never experienced anything like this. I've just tried to help people when I could. I never imagined." Her voice broke, overwhelmed by the reality of what was happening. He smiled gently. "You don't need to say anything. Just know that your actions have meaning, and your life will be easier now because of the compassion you showed. You have inspired me, and I want to make sure that inspiration translates into something tangible for you." As she tried to take in the enormity of the moment, she felt a mix of emotions: joy, disbelief, relief, and a profound sense of validation. Her heart was full, overwhelmed by the realization that selflessness could truly come back around. She thought about the days she had struggled, the nights she had worried, and the moments she had feared for her future. And now, in an instant, everything seemed to shift. The man guided her through the details, showing her how she could use the support he had arranged, while respecting her independence and dignity. She realized that this was not just a gift, It was an acknowledgement of who she was as a person, a recognition of the values she lived by. The luxury cars, the support, the thoughtfulness, it was all secondary to the respect and honor he was showing her. Tears flowed freely now, but they were tears of happiness and release. She laughed softly through the tears, a sound of pure relief and joy. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. He shook his head. "You don't need to. You've already done more than anyone could ask. Just continue being yourself, continue helping others, and know that your life will be easier from this moment forward." The moment felt surreal. Standing there, surrounded by the gleaming cars, the morning sun warming her face, she realized that kindness truly had the power to change lives, not just the lives of those who receive it, but the lives of those who give it as well. The ripple effect of one small act had created an outcome she never imagined, a gift not measured by material wealth alone but by the acknowledgement of her humanity and heart. As the man prepared to leave, he smiled one last time. "Remember, life can surprise us in ways we don't expect. And sometimes those surprises come because someone chose to be good, even when it was hard." The nurse watched him go, her heart racing, and her mind still trying to comprehend what had just happened. She turned to look at the cars again, the symbols of a life that had suddenly shifted in an instant. The fear and worry that had dominated her life for weeks seemed distant now, replaced by hope, gratitude, and a renewed sense of purpose. For the rest of the day, she wandered through her apartment, still in disbelief. She called her family and friends, sharing the news in a mix of shock and joy. Their reactions mirrored her own feelings, amazed, happy, and relieved. She realized that while money and material gifts could never replace the value of hard work and integrity, they could provide freedom, security, and the ability to continue making a difference in the lives of others. By evening, she sat by her window again, looking out at the town below. She thought about the moments that had led her here, the roadside encounter, the decision to help a stranger, the days of struggle and perseverance. Each small action had contributed to this incredible moment. She realized that life had a way of rewarding selflessness in ways that often went beyond imagination. As she sipped her tea and watched the sunset, she felt a quiet sense of peace. She had faced hardship, given without expecting anything in return, and been rewarded not just with material gifts but with recognition, respect, and validation of her true character. The world had shown her that kindness, no matter how small, could ripple outward and return in the most extraordinary ways. And in that moment, she knew something important. Her life had changed forever. Not just because of the cars or the wealth, but because the universe had acknowledged her heart, and she had been reminded of the power of goodness in a world that often felt indifferent. After the extraordinary morning, the nurse felt like she was living in a dream. The shock of the 4 luxury cars and the kind man's gesture still lingered in her mind. It was hard to believe that life could change so quickly, that in just a short time, everything she had been struggling with could shift so dramatically. She sat quietly in her apartment, letting the reality sink in, her hands trembling slightly as she reflected on the past few days. She thought about her life before all of this. The long hours at the hospital, the unpaid overtime, the nights spent worrying about bills and the constant pressure of trying to survive. She remembered the moment she had seen the man stranded on the road, how instinctively she had offered her help without a second thought. It seemed like such a small act, so simple and ordinary, yet it had set in motion something extraordinary. She realized that even her smallest gestures of kindness could ripple outward in ways she could never imagine. Her mind then turned to gratitude. She felt it deeply, a warmth that spread through her chest and brought tears to her eyes. She wanted to thank the man properly, to show him how much his actions meant to her. She didn't just feel grateful for the cars or the financial support. They were amazing, yes. But what moved her most was the recognition of her character, the acknowledgement that her kindness mattered. It was a validation of everything she had believed in, that helping others and staying true to oneself was worth it. Over the next few days, she began to take steps to adjust to her new life. She carefully reviewed the resources the man had arranged for her, making sure she understood how to use them wisely. She didn't want to waste the opportunity or act carelessly. Part of her old habits remained: caution, responsibility, and practicality. But now they were coupled with excitement and hope. She realized she had a chance not only to improve her own life, but also to continue helping others without the constant burden of financial stress weighing her down. She started by using part of the support to secure a stable home. Her small apartment had always been a place of safety, but it was modest and sometimes uncomfortable. Now she was able to move into a better space, one that offered more comfort and room for her family. It wasn't just about luxury, it was about peace of mind, a space where she could think, rest, and grow without constant worry. She felt a sense of relief she hadn't known in years. With her living situation secured, she turned her attention to her passion: helping others. The nurse knew that financial security was important, but it would be meaningless if she stopped doing what she loved. She returned to volunteering at the local clinic, now with the freedom to dedicate more time and energy. She could help patients, without worrying about how she would pay her bills, without the stress of stretching her resources, and without fear for her family's basic needs. The act of giving, which had always brought her joy, now became even more fulfilling. Her friends and neighbors noticed the change in her almost immediately. She carried herself with a new confidence, a quiet assurance that came from knowing she could face life's challenges without fear. People who had admired her dedication for years now saw her thriving, not just surviving. She became an inspiration in her community, proof that goodness and hard work could be recognized and rewarded. She never flaunted the gifts or wealth that had been given to her. She used them thoughtfully, quietly, and always with respect for the source of that kindness. The man who had changed her life remained in touch, not intrusively, but as a supportive friend. He offered guidance when she needed it, and encouragement when she felt uncertain. Over time, they developed a relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. She learned that true kindness could build connections that were meaningful, lasting, and rooted in shared humanity. The experience taught her that gratitude could be expressed not just in words but through actions, generosity, and a commitment to paying it forward. She began to think about ways to help others on a larger scale. With the financial stability she now had, she could sponsor medical care for families in need, donate to local clinics, and even start small programs to help struggling nurses and healthcare workers. The nurse understood what it meant to struggle, to worry about survival while still trying to care for others. Her experience had given her a unique perspective, one that allowed her to see where help was most needed and how it could make the biggest difference. The transformation wasn't just external, it was internal as well. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a clarity about her life that she hadn't had before. She realized that true wealth wasn't measured in money or possessions, but in the ability to live fully, to help others, and to maintain one's values even when life is difficult. She felt empowered, capable, and motivated to continue making positive changes in the world around her. She also understood the importance of humility. The gift she had received was extraordinary, but it didn't make her superior to others. Instead, it reinforced her belief that life rewards those who act with integrity and compassion. She approached her work, her family, and her community with even more dedication, knowing that every act of kindness had value, no matter how small it seemed at the time. Over the following months, her life began to take shape in ways she had never imagined. Her family was secure, her home was comfortable, and she could focus on her true passions without constant stress. She continued to volunteer, now able to dedicate